A woman, as the sect was about to be destroyed, came seeking the Grand Patriarch. The Grand Patriarch never expected that a useless cultivator at the transformation stage nearly ruined the sect he had built. At once, he pulled out a mystical bull and handed it over, letting the bull follow back to destroy all enemies. This was no ordinary beast but the Dark Thunder Bull Horse, a great demon under Lord Tao King, whose single sneeze could wipe out countless incarnations. And yet, this terrifying creature was only the weakest servant beneath the Grand Patriarch. Long ago, the Patriarch crossed into this fantasy world with a system. With its help, he quickly became the strongest existence on the primordial continent. But just as he prepared to head to the next continent, the system suddenly shut down, halting all further progress. From then on, he lived in constant fear that someone stronger would appear. Eventually, he retreated to the deathless abyss where none dared enter, hiding there for 100,000 years. Until one day, a weary young master named Lucas arrived, bringing the final hope of his sect to seek the Patriarch. His master, before passing, passed the position of sect leader to him and warned, though their sect now seemed like a dying third-rate clan, even 100,000 years ago, the Sword God sect was unworthy even to carry their shoes. Now, with the sect facing annihilation, Lucas was given a token and told to seek the Patriarch in the deathless abyss before their protective formation collapsed. But the abyss was filled with vicious beasts and deadly perils. Lucas gave a bitter smile, doubting whether the first Patriarch was truly still alive. No sooner had he entered than he was hunted for 2.5 days by a monstrous beast. Just as despair overtook him, a mighty roar shook the skies. The legendary Nine-Nether Beast appeared, strong enough that even the entire Sword God sect would only face slaughter. And now, it descended straight toward him. Terrified, Lucas collapsed to the ground, thinking death had come. Tears of unwillingness filled his eyes as he remembered his master's last words. Was the first Patriarch only a legend after all? But the next moment, Lucas realized he was standing on the back of the Nine-Nether Beast. Stunned beyond belief, he wondered how such a demon would allow a human to ride it. In an instant, the beast carried him deep into the abyss, where a majestic palace towered before him. After setting Lucas down, the Nine-Nether Beast bowed low to the palace and said, "Master, the task is complete." From within, a mysterious figure slowly emerged.
I understand. You may leave.
This scene shocked Lucas. Never had he imagined such a mighty creature bowing to another. Quickly, Lucas paid his respects. Just then, the token at his waist floated up by itself, flying straight into the man's hand. "Why would you take my token, senior?" Lucas asked in panic. The man only smiled faintly. "This has always been mine. How can it be called taking?" Realization struck Lucas. You are the first Patriarch of the Eternal Immortal Sect, Master Ethan." Bowing deeply, he continued, "I, Lucas, the 999th Sect Master, humbly beg you to return and save the sect." Ethan was surprised that even after 100,000 years of seclusion, someone still remembered him. But when he heard the situation, his expression darkened. "The Sword God sect, just a pathetic half-step cultivator dares nearly to destroy my domain." As a traveler from another world, when had he ever suffered such humiliation? At once, he prepared to strike, ready to wipe the Sword God sect from existence with a single palm from 1,000 miles away. But at that very moment, a voice he hadn't heard in 100,000 years echoed in his mind. System upgrade complete. Initiating the 6 trials for advancing to the next continent. The first trial, help Lucas resolve the sect crisis without acting personally.
Tiers wählet in Etans Eis.
Finally, the chance to reach the next continent. But to Lucas, the Patriarch now looked strangely intense. He thought to himself nervously, could the Patriarch want a forbidden romance with me? But our ages are worlds apart. Would he accept me? Just then, Ethan grabbed Lucas's hand. "Since the system forbids me, then let young Lucas resolve himself." Blushing, Lucas misunderstood, thinking the Patriarch was confessing and about to begin a forbidden love. If so, what about our future child? Should he be named Ethan Jr.? But Ethan's tone grew serious. "I can save the sect for a moment, but not forever.
True strength must come from yourself.
Do you understand?" Lucas lowered his head in shame, whispering that the Sword God sect's master wielded an innate divine body, one he could not withstand for even 3 moves.
Ethan frowned in thought.
Yes, this was indeed a problem. He would have to cultivate this not-so-bright heir properly. "In that case, I'll first give you an outfit. Once you wear it, you'll outshine that so-called divine body." Lucas sighed in disbelief. With death so near, why would clothes matter? Could he mean to give me burial garments? Ethan suddenly whisked him into a vast void.
This is my Wardrobe.
Pointing to the endless stars, he called out, "My descendant needs a battle suit. Who among you will follow him?" In a flash, 4 radiant armors appeared.
Lucas Eiswiedend. You call this clothing?
These are the 4 elemental battle bodies of water, fire, earth, and wind. Overwhelmed with excitement, he pointed to the blazing fire body. "Patriarch, I want this one." But before he finished speaking, Ethan kicked it to pieces. "So ugly. How could my descendant walk outside in that? Bring out another batch, at least something fit for Paris Fashion Week." Lucas nearly fainted. These priceless battle bodies, stronger than any innate physique, were being destroyed like worthless rags. Soon, a purple glow rose behind him. It was the innate venom body, once worn by a lone warrior who defeated 100 Sky Lords unscathed. Lucas thought, if I had this, I could soar instantly. He timidly pointed. Patriarch, I want this one. Yet Ethan shattered it with a slap. Girls shouldn't wear something so rebellious. After 2.5 minutes of repeated disappointments, Lucas was near collapse. Every suit he glanced at exploded, shattering not just armor but his fragile heart. Finally, Ethan casually pointed behind him. This solar divine body is good. But with your current strength, the moment you put it on, it might burn you alive. Lucas hesitated. This was a deadly choice. But remembering he carried the sect's last hope, he steeled himself.
Il te.
Yet as soon as he put it on, his energy ignited wildly, engulfed by a domineering force. Ethan signaled him calmly.
Do not resist. Drop your defenses and lead to me.
Gritting his teeth, Lucas obeyed, withdrawing his power, trusting that the Patriarch would never harm him. After hours of baptism, Ryan slowly opened his eyes, and between his brows appeared a totem of the Great Sun Divine Flame, the symbol of the Great Sun Yong Divine Body. Ryan thanked the Ancestor for granting him this body and knelt to kowtow, filled with tears of gratitude toward Arthur. It's just a piece of clothing, Arthur said. If you truly want to thank me, then help me restore the forgotten immortal sect. Hearing this, Ryan silently vowed not to fail the Ancestor's expectations. With the sect in grave danger, he said he would return another day to pay respects. Just as he was about to leave, Arthur suddenly stopped him, saying, "Don't rush. I have something important for you to do." Ryan's spirit lifted. "Ancestor, what are your orders?" "I, Ben, will risk my life to fulfill it." Scratching his head with some embarrassment, Arthur admitted, "It's nothing major."
Do you know how to cook?
Ryan was stunned, but moments later the table was filled with dishes. "Ancestor, the food is ready," he said.
He must return to the sect now.
Yet he could not understand why he had to wear such strange clothes just to cook. "Don't be in such a hurry," Arthur said. "It's been a long time since anyone shared a meal with me. Ryan, have a piece of native pork first." Before he could refuse, Arthur shoved it into his mouth. At once Ryan realized something was wrong. This was no ordinary pork, but the flesh of a sacred beast, the Chelan. Just a single bite spread fiery spiritual power throughout his body. Arthur, thinking he was choking, quickly handed him a cup of water. "Don't rush, drink some water first." Ryan tried to refuse, but it was forced down his throat, and instantly his eyes widened. It wasn't ordinary water but a full cup of divine jade spring brew, each drop worth millions of spirit stones, a treasure most sects could only dream of. Yet Arthur had given him an entire cup. To show his gratitude, Ryan kowtowed 3 more times. "Such precious wine, I am unworthy." But Arthur simply said, "No need. There's still a whole lake of it." Just then, a thunder tribulation descended from the sky, leaving Ryan dumbfounded. Who would have thought that just by eating a meal, he would break through to the Emerald Pool realm? Before he could recover from his shock, an even greater bolt of lightning struck, and Arthur's system voice rang out, "Descendant Ryan detected. Rewarding host with 10,000 years of cultivation." His stagnant cultivation surged forward, and after being stuck at Tao Emperor 1st grade for 100,000 years, Arthur finally broke through to Tao Emperor 2nd grade. "Ancestor," Ryan asked, "was that thunder you're doing?"
Arthur chuckled. Just a meiner Breakdruck, nothing to fuss about.
Ryan thought, if that was minor, then his own was nothing. He insisted he really had to return, but Arthur glanced at the sky.
It's late.
"Stay and enjoy a sauna with me before leaving." Ryan didn't understand what a sauna was, nor why he had to wear such strange attire. Could it be the Ancestor was a lecture? Seeing his discomfort, Arthur decided to distract him with a nursery rhyme. This is a rhyme full of positive energy, called Shy Cohabitation.
It tells the story of a lonely man and woman living together.
Hearing it, Ryan's face turned crimson. So he really is a lecher.
I wie walked right into the Tigersten.
But the next moment, he noticed something unusual. The steam in the room was rapidly gathering around him. Looking closer, he realized it wasn't steam at all but dense spiritual energy made tangible. And the so-called story Arthur told was in fact the legendary Earthrang cultivation method, 10,000 flames burning the sky. Even the mighty divine sword sect's heritage paled in comparison. Ryan finally understood. Arthur, even if forbidden to intervene directly by the system, had countless ways to guide him through the trial. After a night of teaching, Ryan directly broke through from the brittle bone realm to the bright spirit realm. Arthur nodded in satisfaction. "Ryan, there's little else to offer here. If you want to return, go ahead." Saying this, he pulled out a young ox.
The road back to the forgotten immortal sect is long.
"Take this ox to ease your journey. If you get hungry, you can roast it." Meanwhile, the forgotten immortal sect's protective barrier was shattered by the divine sword sect. The traitor, the sect's senior disciple Ethan, led their forces straight in. Seeing his old sect still struggling to resist, Ethan sneered. "They say those who adapt to the times are wise. Your sect master abandoned you. Why not join the great divine sword sect like I did?" The disciples cursed him as a disgrace. "We of the forgotten immortal sect would rather die in battle than live in shame." Gravely wounded, the great elder forced himself forward once more.
If anione musti, let it be me before my disciples.
With that, he unleashed a terrifying surge of spiritual power.
Ethan was shocked. Elder Luke, have you gone met, burning your life force?
But the elder said nothing, charging like an arrow loosed. At the last moment, his fatal strike was blocked by a sword, wielded by the Divine Sword Sect's chief disciple, Sword Maniac, whose cultivation had reached the 8th stage of the spirit realm. Even with his life force burning, Elder Luke could barely raise himself to a middling level, and badly injured as he was, he stood no chance. After only a few exchanges, he was defeated. Sword Maniac withdrew his blade and said coldly, "Ethan, collect your master's corpse." The disciples rushed to shield the great elder, but exhausted as they were, none could stop Ethan. Just as his sword was about to pierce the elder, despair filled the old man's eyes. Is heaven determined to destroy my forgotten immortal sect? In that instant, a mighty roar shook the air, and Ethan was blasted away, dead in a single strike. The sudden turn stunned everyone. 100,000 years ago, a voice thundered, "Your divine sword sect was but a minor vassal of my forgotten immortal sect. How dare you now presume to lord over us? Who gave you such courage?" The great elder, overjoyed to see Ryan safe, cried out, "Sect master, have you brought the ancestor back?" Ryan smiled faintly, saying he had found the ancestor. Yet his next words struck like lightning, "But the ancestor is unwilling to descend the mountain. Our life and death must still be left to fate." At that moment, Sword Maniac's excited voice rang out from behind him. "I can't believe you survived that place. I nearly died there myself, but thanks to that ordeal I comprehended a sword technique so powerful none have yet withstood it. Since you also came back alive, I want you to face my ultimate strike." Alarmed, the great elder urged, "Ryan, you mustn't be reckless. Even at my peak, I couldn't withstand that move." But Ryan showed no fear. Ryan signaled that from here on he would handle it. A wisp of the great sun divine flame appeared between Arthur's fingers. Sword Maniac, seeing this, gave a disdainful laugh. "A mere spark of flame dares to resist my overwhelming sword intent?" But the moment he touched the fire, his screams echoed through the entire forgotten immortal sect. Within just a few breaths, Sword Maniac was dead. Seeing the battle end, Evelyn prepared to deal with the remaining divine sword sect remnants, when suddenly an old man appeared in the sky, stepping on twin swords.
Who killed my disciple?
This was none other than Tang Zong, the great elder of the divine sword sect, whose cultivation had already reached half a step into the divine transformation realm. It was by his ambush that the former sect master of the forgotten immortal sect had fallen. At once, Evelyn gathered the great sun divine flame without hesitation and hurled it at Tang Zong. Looking at the small flame before him, Tang Zong merely gave a cold snort, not bothering to dodge. But in the very next second, he felt the terrifying might of the flame, his face full of disbelief. He never expected that Ryan, still in the nascent soul realm, could unleash a power comparable to the divine transformation realm. Ryan pressed his advantage, directly casting the earth rank technique, 10,000 flames burning the sky. Tang Zong no longer dared to underestimate him and hurriedly slashed with sword chi to split the fire, then thrust forward with a diamond rock spear in his hands.
The Strike gravely wounded Ryan.
Did you think battle was just about flinging fire from afar? Your combat experience is far too lacking. Just as Tang Zong was about to finish Ryan off with one last thrust, the ox Arthur had gifted him suddenly appeared, blocking the attack. The so-called indestructible diamond rock spear was shattered in an instant by its horns. "I hadn't planned to act," the ox said, "but if the ancestor found out I failed to protect you, I'd be in trouble." With that, it grew rapidly in size before everyone's stunned eyes. The once arrogant Tang Zong now found himself utterly crushed by its presence, unable to muster even a thought of resistance. He fell to his knees, frantically begging for mercy.
Mich die Ochs, spare me.
"I swear the divine sword sect will never again oppose the forgotten immortal sect. You may do as you please with these disciples behind me, just let me go." The ox smiled kindly.
Clever boy, you know my tastes well.
But just as it relaxed, Tang Zong, who had long prepared for this, suddenly burned his essence and unleashed his strongest strike, a blow at the Tao King realm level. Thinking his plan about to succeed, he burst into wild laughter. Even if you're a Black Thunder ox of the Tao King realm, you cannot withstand this strike. Yet to his shock, the blow landed on the ox without causing so much as a ripple, only making it sneeze. The thunderous bellow that followed dimmed heaven and earth, and under that sneeze, Tang Zong was charred to ashes on the spot. Everyone present was stunned. A simple sneeze had slain a divine transformation master, someone who nearly destroyed their sect, and the ox hadn't even felt anything. Meanwhile, in the realm of death beyond life, Arthur was watching calmly. None of this surprised him, for the ox he had given Ryan was not an ordinary Black Thunder ox but a rare mutated one, famed across the beast world for its indestructible defense. Only racial suppression or absolute superiority could reach it. The remaining divine sword sect disciples, seeing their great elder perish, fled in panic. But the great elder of the forgotten immortal sect suddenly collapsed to his knees, having burned through all his life force in the battle and left with less than an hour to live. Seeing Ryan frozen in shock, the ox sighed. "Didn't you bring divine jade spring brew? Give it to him to drink." The elder, of course, knew well what the divine jade spring brew was, a single drop worth countless treasures. He refused to let such a divine item be wasted on a dying man like him, insisting it should be saved for the sect's promising youth. But Ryan pulled out an entire bag of the brew.
Elder, don't be polite. I have plenty more.
The dying elder was so startled that he trembled. Then, seeing a bit spill to the ground, he threw aside his dignity and licked it eagerly. Ryan, embarrassed, quickly said, "Elder, you needn't do that. The ancestor gave me an entire jug. Drink as much as you like. If it's not enough, I have more." The elder began to wonder if this was all a dream before death. To convince him it wasn't, Ryan released the great sun flame totem Arthur had casually given him and told him, even this ox is only one of the ancestors' many beasts, and the weakest at that. The worldview the elder had held for centuries collapsed in that instant. No longer holding back, he grabbed the brew and gulped it down, while the disciples eagerly replenished themselves, preparing to counterattack the Divine Sword sect. That day, the Divine Sword sect once again recalled the terror of being dominated by the forgotten immortal sect 10,000 years ago. Their disciples were utterly routed. At that moment, the long-secluded sect master of the Divine Sword sect, Blade Nameless, finally emerged. His disciples rushed forward, begging him to save the sect. But thinking of the ox's terrifying might, they feared even their master was no match and pleaded with him instead to flee with them. Blade Nameless only sneered. So many of you together couldn't even take down the tiny forgotten immortal sect? As punishment, you will replace them as my nourishment. At once, the soul pearl erupted with dark demonic power, enveloping the disciples. In mere breaths, their souls were devoured, and Blade Nameless' aura surged higher. It turned out he had long ago been possessed by an ancient demon clan, and the soul pearl in his hand was the national treasure of the Bright Moon dynasty. After fully refining it, he spread his arms as demonic power flooded from him, his cultivation soaring to half a step into the Tao Emperor realm. Even the ox, with its unmatched defense, was defeated in a single blow. As Ryan and the ox faced despair, a brother and sister suddenly appeared before them. They were demon hunters from the distant Bright Moon dynasty, come to capture the demon and reclaim the soul pearl. But they had arrived too late. With Blade Nameless empowered by both the soul pearl and Tao Emperor level strength, even the demon hunter's innate advantage against demons could not bridge the gap. Under the spreading demonic aura, everyone was paralyzed, unable to move, forced to watch in despair as their life force was drained away. Evelyn was filled with regret. If only he hadn't led the disciples to counterattack, perhaps things wouldn't have come to this. Just then, Arthur's calm laughter echoed from the heavens, and a massive multicolored hand descended.
He tore open this space. Greetings, my dear juniors.
I am your ancestor Arthur Chun. Long time no see. The sudden appearance scared Damien so badly he wet himself, because manipulating the power of heaven and earth was a technique only a Tao Emperor could use. Back then, he chose to refine the soul pearl in a small place like Divine Sword East precisely because the aura there was scarce, making it impossible for powerful figures to appear. On this continent, a Tao king alone could reign supreme. Yet now, a living Tao Emperor had appeared in this remote land. Damien immediately restrained his aura and respectfully said, "If this junior has offended your descendants, I hereby apologize and beg your forgiveness." Hearing this, Arthur Chun smiled faintly. "No need to be nervous. I only came to greet my descendants. I won't lift a finger to save them." Damien let out a sigh of relief. Usually, beings of this level already regarded life and death as part of the natural order and would never bother to interfere. But he underestimated Arthur Chen's protectiveness. 10,000 years ago, he had been famous for shielding his kin. Arthur then spoke politely, "Where I come from, the greeting custom is a high five. So let me give you one." Before Damien could react, the massive multicolored hand in the sky came crashing down at him. Only then did Damien realize Arthur Chun had been toying with him all along. He had lived in hiding for tens of thousands of years, only to meet such a powerhouse the moment he resurfaced. He couldn't accept dying here. With a furious roar, Damien unleashed all his trump cards. "Now I stand at my peak. I am the strongest existence on this continent. Even if the Heavenly King himself came, he couldn't kill me." But before he could finish, that friendly high five sent Damien flying thousands of miles, reducing him to ashes that scattered into the void. "Well, I've said my greetings. Time for me to go," Arthur Chun said lightly as he turned away. The demon hunter siblings stared at the sky, utterly shaken. Even the strongest of their nation would be nothing more than ants before this being. They never imagined that the ancestor of a mere third-rate sect would turn out to be so terrifying. After some thought, the siblings produced a treasure chest. This is another ancestral relic of the Bright Moon dynasty, the Starfall map. It records countless places where mighty experts have perished. Please accept it as gratitude for saving our lives. Evelyn knew full well how important this item was and hurriedly tried to refuse, but the siblings mistook this for an insult. They knelt down on the spot, knocking their heads against the ground. "If you don't accept it, we'll never get up." Helpless, Evelyn awkwardly accepted it. Meanwhile, in the land of death beyond life, an elderly white-haired man nearing the end of his lifespan was seeking a burial place. His name was Leonard White, a peak Tao King expert. Naturally, his arrival didn't escape Arthur Chen's notice. At first Arthur intended to ignore him, but the system informed him that this man was tied to his second trial of heartbreak. Reluctantly, Arthur approached and asked if he had seen any fallen sects or families bearing the Chun surname. Leonard White quickly and respectfully replied that 10 years ago, he had guided 2 promising youths from the Chun family in eastern Yu of the continent. One had extraordinary talent and progressed rapidly, while the other, born with an innate thunder body, had abnormally narrow meridians and was a hopeless waste despite countless attempts at guidance. Hearing this, Arthur was confident his descendant must be the talented one. But the system told him the hopeless waste was actually his true target. As Leonard White went on criticizing the Chun family men, Arthur directly used heavenly power to silence him. Startled, Leonard White fell to his knees, kowtowing frantically.
"Senior, please don't be angry."
Arthur replied calmly, "You guided my descendants. As repayment, Let me offer you something to eat. Under Arthur's oppressive aura, Leonard White could only weep as he swallowed what looked like dung. But in the next second, his expression changed dramatically, for what seemed like filth was actually the legendary golden serpent fruit, a sacred medicine that restored 1,000 years of beast essence with a single bite. He had sought it in vain for millennia.
Overcome with emotion. Leonard White wept tears of gratitude.
To think a mere bit of guidance earns such a reward, this is too much. Arthur scoffed, I have plenty of these lying around. If you don't eat them, they'll rot. If you're willing to serve me, you can eat as much as you want. Leonard White's jaw dropped as he saw entire baskets of golden serpent fruits. When had a sacred treasure ever been measured by the basket? He immediately threw himself at Arthur Chen's feet, clutching his leg. Not just as a subordinate, let me be your beast of burden if need be.
I'll gladly serve you.
Arthur looked on with disdain. If not for the system forbidding him from acting directly, he would never have accepted such an unsightly old man as a follower. Meanwhile, in eastern Yu of the Hongmeng continent, a young man sat dejectedly before a stone statue. His name was Daniel Chun, current head of the Chun family. Though his narrow meridians left him stuck at the bottom of the academy rankings, his younger sister, Claire Chun, was a true prodigy of the academy. Yet even so, the Chun family received no resources. The White Deer Academy, founded by Leonard White to spread cultivation to all and benefit the people, had fallen into corruption after his departure. The new headmaster monopolized all resources, forcing families to submit completely as vassals if they wanted access. Determined to preserve his family's independence, Daniel Chun refused. The result was that he and his sister were targeted, given only the worst scraps of resources. Daniel himself didn't mind, but he always felt guilty toward his exceptionally gifted sister. When he returned home one day, however, the situation worsened. His sister had voluntarily signed a contract with the headmaster. If she could win the coming competition in 10 days, the Chun family would receive resources without submitting to the academy. Otherwise, she would belong to the academy forever. Daniel Chun, your sister sacrificed herself to win resources for a useless waste like you. Don't be ungrateful, others sneered. Face dark with anger, Daniel went to his sister. He wasn't angry at her, but at himself, for clinging to pride and dragging her down to this point. Once glorious, the Chun family had fallen into decline, and he felt he had shamed his ancestors. But their forebear had left behind a token, said to summon him in times of crisis. Daniel wished desperately for his ancestor to appear once more and save the family. Just then, thunder split the sky, and the token began to glow. Shocked, Daniel thought, could the ancestor truly be manifesting? But instead, a lightning bolt struck straight at him, nearly killing him on the spot.
Furious, Daniel Tore of High Spelt. You irresponsible old ancestor.
I'll not only steal your offerings. He even wanted to spray you with urine, but just then Leonard White, who had just been kneeling in thanks to Arthur Chun, was suddenly transported over. Leonard White looked completely dumbfounded. Where the hell was he brought to, and why was it still raining? The next second, his eyes locked with Daniel Chen's. Though Leonard White was furious, he didn't dare really harm him. Instead, he directly stepped on Daniel Chun and used him like a flying mount. After a night's journey, the two finally arrived before Arthur Chen's great hall. Your ancestor is right ahead.
Come in with me.
Hearing this, Daniel Chun couldn't help but sigh with emotion. He never imagined the ancestor hadn't died, but had somehow become Leonard White's right-hand man. That was as good as the saying, an honored ancestor brings glory. With great anticipation, Daniel Chun walked inside, but when he saw where Leonard White was pointing, he was completely dumbstruck. This is our Chun family ancestor? Why is he sleeping in a pile of trash? Could it be he's guarding the door for Senior Leonard? At that moment, the trash heap suddenly shifted, and a bird's head emerged. When Daniel Chun got a clear look at the figure of the nine-nether beast, he was scared out of his wits. How could the ancestor dare sleep on the body of a legendary great demon? He quickly turned to the side, hoping Leonard White would help save the ancestor, but before he could speak, Leonard White knelt straight down. Master, I did not fail you. I, little Leonard, have brought your descendant. This scene made Daniel Chun question reality itself. Who was Leonard White? Countless people grew up hearing his legends, and now he was kneeling like a servant. Just then, Evelyn arrived in falling capital, but the sect had already stabilized. Her trip was only to repay the ancestor's kindness. Daniel Chun was deeply moved. From their conversation, he could feel the ancestor's overwhelming aura of wealth, and he thought to himself, that woman isn't even family, yet the ancestor gave her so many treasures. As a direct descendant, surely I'll soar even higher. He bowed deeply. Ancestor above, please accept the bow of your descendant Daniel Chun. Hearing this, Arthur Chun gave him a faint glance and slowly spoke. So, you are the junior who came to seek my help? Daniel Chun immediately poured out all the family's difficulties and crises, thinking that if the ancestor casually gave him something, their problems would vanish. But Arthur Chun had already seen through his thoughts. You ran the family into this sorry state and still dare to ask for things? First, accept punishment. With that, Arthur pointed a finger from Adair and directly crippled Daniel's Dantian. In that instant, his cultivation and battle body all vanished. Shocked and confused, Daniel demanded why Arthur would do this. Arthur replied, for someone who managed the family so poorly, abolishing your cultivation and battle body is only a minor punishment. Your true punishment has only begun. As soon as his words fell, a massive alchemy furnace descended from the sky. I've recently taken an interest in alchemy. You will be punished by serving as my fire-tending boy. You'll need to keep the fire burning for 10 days to half a month. During this time, you'll stay here obediently. Hearing this, Daniel panicked. If he stayed here 10 days, he'd miss his sister's competition. At his protest, Arthur's gaze suddenly sharpened, and a terrifying pressure slammed down, nearly crushing him. You have no right to refuse.
From now on, my aura will follow you like a shadow.
Either you tend the fire until I send you back, or you die. Daniel could only grit his teeth and endure, cursing in his heart. Is this really my ancestor? Everyone always said he was overprotective. Under Arthur's oppression, he had no choice but to become the fire-tending boy. For 10 straight days, Daniel Chun repeated the work of feeding the fire. Just as he collapsed to the ground for a brief rest, Arthur's cold voice rang out again. From now on, you won't even have time to eat or rest. Keep working. Daniel raised his weak little fists but didn't dare resist. Meanwhile, the written exams at White Deer Academy had officially begun. Claire Chun, ranked first in the academy, naturally had unquestionable strength. After defeating several disciples in a row, the headmaster believed his investment was truly profitable. He planned that once she won the championship, he would package her as Leonard White's direct disciple, then expand his influence under Leonard's name to reap the benefits. Soon, Claire Chen's winning streak brought her to the final match. As her last opponent stepped onto the stage, Claire's eyes hardened. The man before her was Evan Yi, young master of the Yi family, one of the 3 great clans of Eastern Yu, and always a sworn enemy to her and her brother. Evan looked at Claire with scorn. Trash is still trash, no matter how many resources you get. Giving resources to your useless brother is worse than feeding pigs. Enraged, Claire unleashed her strongest technique, the White Deer sword art. Back then, Leonard White himself had dominated the world with this very sword art he created. Seeing this, the crowd was shocked, and the headmaster sighed in admiration, thinking his choice had been perfect. Yet just when everyone believed Evan would surely lose, a wicked smile curved his lips. Suddenly, another Evan Yi appeared out of thin air and punched Claire hard in the stomach, shattering a large portion of her spiritual veins. The crowd's faces changed dramatically, and the headmaster leapt to his feet. That's the twin battle body left behind by Senior Leonard. With it, the host's power doubles, and even their life is doubled. Where did you find this? Evan threw back his head and laughed proudly.
I owe it all to Daniel Chen.
If he hadn't secretly slipped me laxatives back then, I wouldn't have collapsed from diarrhea into the academy latrine, and never would have found Leonard's twin battle body hidden there. The headmaster was speechless. No wonder he had searched the entire academy in vain. Evan sneered. Since we've known each other since childhood, kneel and kowtow to me 3 times, and I'll spare you.
Claire Said noting, only glaring fiercely.
Seeing her so stubborn, Evan slapped her hard across the face. If you don't kneel today, I'll beat you until you do. The students below roared in anger at his abuse of a woman, many shouting at the headmaster. Claire has already lost the ability to fight.
The match should end.
But the headmaster stood still, indifferent. In his eyes, Evan with the twin battle body was far more valuable than Claire, who had merely been given a bit of guidance. Since the headmaster made no move to intervene, Evan didn't hold back. He viciously kicked Claire in the dantian, crippling her completely. Meanwhile, Daniel Chun was still struggling under Arthur Chen's crushing aura, desperately tending the fire. Just as he lamented when these bitter days would end, the jade pendant at his chest suddenly shook violently. At the same time, Claire Chun, her cultivation shattered by Evan, was now on the brink of death. Patriarch, please return quickly. Burning with anguish, Daniel rushed to Arthur Chun to explain the situation and begged to know when he could leave. But Arthur only answered calmly, soon. At this, Evelyn teased from the side, the ancestor has lived for hundreds of thousands of years. To him, a year or 2 is what he calls soon. Hearing this, Daniel finally broke down.
Go ahead and kill me if you want. WHY Bota torturing me like this?
I know I'm worthless, I'm the one who ran the family into a dead end, but I really did my best. Now my sister's life is hanging by a thread, yet you still want to keep me trapped here. I never imagined that behind the family I fought so hard to protect would stand such a biased ancestor. These disrespectful words shocked Leonard White and Evelyn, their faces changed drastically as they rushed to stop him. But Daniel Chun couldn't care anymore. Rather than watch his sister die, he might as well fight with all he had. Just as he was about to strike, he suddenly realized his spiritual power and battle body had returned. Evelyn saw this and shouted in anger, scolding Daniel Chun for being so reckless and slandering the ancestor without even realizing what had changed in his body. As Daniel carefully sensed, he was stunned by the power he now released. He couldn't believe that his cultivation, once only at the spirit condensation realm, had now advanced to the divine transformation realm. Even his narrow and weak spiritual veins had now become vast as an ocean. Leonard White shook his head and said, "Boy, did you really think the ancestor wanted to kill you? In truth, he only sealed your cultivation, your spiritual veins, and your physical strength, all for the purpose of granting you a new battle body." As his words fell, the alchemy furnace behind Daniel suddenly shook violently, and a beam of golden light shot straight into his body. This was one of the ancient 10 supreme battle bodies that surpassed all divine bodies in the world, the 4-seal battle body. As the name implied, it sealed 4 kinds of powers within its host, and only by drawing on the host's ultimate rage could it be perfectly fused. That was why the Ancestor had provoked him again and again. Before his arrival, the Ancestor had spent the whole night struggling to choose the most suitable battle body for him. Not only that, the awakening of the four-sealed battle body required the sacrifice of lifespan. For his sake, the Ancestor had sacrificed 1,000 years of life, leaving him so withered. Hearing all this, Daniel Chun, still proud, asked, if the Ancestor was doing it for my own good, why didn't he just say so directly? At that, Evelyn softly explained, the Ancestor has a strange quirk. Every time he wants to give us something good, he always goes about it in a roundabout way. He's really just an old man with a bit of pride. Arthur Chun, hearing their gossip, was a little speechless. The truth was that the system didn't allow him to give directly, so he had to take the long way around. Meanwhile, the system itself realized it had been tricked. What it thought were punishments for Daniel Chun had actually been blessings all along. This shameless host drove it mad, yet it could do nothing about him. As for Arthur Chun, he simply ignored it. After all, he hadn't given anything directly.